To service the boss reels, you'll need brake cleaner, cow sheets grease, Reel X lubricant, a small Phillips and flat blade screwdriver, a T7 Torx wrench, a 1/2 inch or adjustable wrench, needle nose pliers, and a 1/8 Allen wrench. The first thing you want to do is check for any problems. You want to turn the handle, move the lever back and forth, check the free spool, make sure the spool is spinning well, check the clicker, make sure it's engaging and disengaging properly. Basically just go over the reel, see if there's any problems, that way when you get into it, you can address them. The next thing you want to do is take the reel down to its sub-assemblies. This is the frame, the side plate, and the spool. First thing you do is take off the 4 side plate screws with your T7 Torx wrench. This will let you slide the frame off. You can set that aside. Next, you take your flat blade screwdriver and pop the black cap off the preset. Then you can push the clicker side of the spool down onto the table. This will let the E-clip pop out, and you can put the flat blade screwdriver between the E-clip and the spool shaft and twist it off. Take care not to lose it. This will let you slide the spool out from the side plate, and those are your 3 sub-assemblies. The next thing we're going to work on is the spool sub-assembly. You can start by taking the 4 spool cover screws off with your flat blade screwdriver. Pull the cover off and see the titanium, the drag washer there. You can remove the titanium and spool assembly out as one piece. And you can see your carbon fiber drag washer. You can check the spool bearing, make sure it's spinning smoothly. Pop the washer out. Make sure it's clean and free of salt, oil, grease. Next thing you want to do is apply a thin coating of grease on the spool surface and on the bearing. Make sure it's thoroughly coated, but you want to take off all the big lumps of grease, just leave a thin layer. This will act as a barrier for the salt, help prevent corrosion. You can wipe off any excess from the edge there so it doesn't get caught between the spool and the frame, which will slow the free spool down. The drag washer is clean. You can go ahead and put it back in, making sure that the tabs on the drag washer line up with the tabs on the spool. Check to make sure that the spring is on the spool shaft and that the titanium is clean. You can go ahead and slide that back into the spool. Place the spool cover and tighten down the 4 screws. You can now move on to the pinion side of the spool shaft. And it's basically identical to the clicker side. Remove the spool cover screws. Remove the pinion titanium assembly. You can see on this side there's some grease and salt embedded in the drag washer, so we'll show you how to clean that in a moment. pop that washer out, set it aside. And again, apply a thin coating of grease on the spool. Wipe off all the excess. To clean the drag washers, we're going to use brake cleaner. This will get out any salt, break down any grease and oil, and rinse it out. We're also going to use a Scotch-Brite pad to help rough up the drag surface and scrub out some of those impurities. So you want to spray the brake cleaner onto the surface of the drag fairly thoroughly, and then go ahead and use the pad and rough up the surface of the drag washer. Then you want to spray the surface with the brake cleaner and rinse out all the dirt, grease, and so forth. Do that on both sides. Then you want to dry the drag washer. Be careful not to bend it or crease it, and let that dry. And you can clean the titanium off. Put the clean drag washer into the spool, place the titanium, put the cover back on, and tighten down the screws. Now you want to make sure that the spool cover is centered around the pinion so it doesn't slow your free spool down. So you can spin the spool, listen for any rubbing, and if everything sounds and looks good, you can finish tightening down the screws. The next subassembly is the side plate. You can see from this photo the side plate on the left needs to be serviced. The grease is really dirty. You can see in some areas where it's kind of breaking down. The one on the right looks good though. If that came in, we would probably not even have to clean that and relube it. It looks really good. But the one on the left, you definitely want to clean out all the old grease and apply fresh stuff. So to do that, you want to take the handle off. Use your 1/8 pound wrench to take the set screw out. Use your 1/2 inch or adjustable wrench to take the nut off. Go ahead and remove the handle and the handle washers. Then you can pull the main gear and gear shaft out along with the main gear washer. Set those aside. Next, you want to clean out all that old grease, salt, dirt. Get out as much as possible. Now you can put some fresh grease on the side plate. Again, you just kind of want a thin layer. It's a barrier for the salt and everything. I'm going to apply it around the gear pocket there, but not on this surface near the anti-reverse bearings. We're going to put some oil there later. Wipe off any excess where the spool travels. Now you can put a little Relax on the area where the main gear washer goes. the washer on. Put a little oil on top of it. This will keep the main gear spinning smoothly. Replace the main gear and the gear shaft. You want to make sure that the gear shaft is completely pushed into the main gear. Replace your handle washers. You can hold the main gear from the back so it doesn't drop into the side plate. And this hole in the nut is an area where you could lubricate the reel from the outside when you're just doing your general servicing. For this, we can oil right into the gear shaft itself. You can fill up that reservoir. You can go ahead and put the handle back on to whichever hole that you like and replace the nut. You want to make sure this nut is really snug so the handle doesn't get loose when you're fishing, but you also want to take care as to not to over tighten. And finally you can replace the set screw. Go ahead and put a little grease on the main gear and move it around the teeth as well. That'll make the gears smoother. Next, you want to take the preset out, clean it. Take the preset apart, take the knurled piece off and clean it as well. Clean inside the inside of the cam there, the preset. And clean the knurled section. Put a little fresh grease inside there. And replace the knurled piece. Want to be careful always not to tighten that down, either when adjusting the preset or cleaning it like we are now. Next, you want to remove the old grease from inside the lever and cam track. Apply some fresh grease. And replace the preset. You can put a little grease on the bottom of the preset as well. This is where it travels along the cam track. I want to make sure that's lubed. And you can replace it. Next, I'll show you how you can adjust your drag lever to either have a short throw or long throw. Right now it's in the long throw. You put the preset in, it goes all the way inside the lever. You can see the lever will have a greater distance of travel from free spool to the strike position. If you want a shorter throw, you can lift the preset up and rotate the lever up to just past the word off on the side plate. You can see this gives you a much shorter throw of the lever, kind of like an off-on, like a star drag reel almost. The last subassembly is the frame. First thing you can do is you can clean out the bottom of the frame, get some of the grease and salt out of there that comes off the line. Then you can take some Reel-X, you can put it on the bottom of the frame around the holes where the screws for the clamp and the foot come through. Next, you could put some fresh grease on the inside of the frame. This one looked pretty good, so we're just going to put a little fresh stuff on here. If there's any old grease, just like the other stuff, you want to clean it all out first and then reapply the fresh stuff. Just a thin coating is fine. Looks like the foot has got a lot of salt on it, so you can put a little of the Real X on there and smear it around. Rub some of it off lightly with the Scotch-Brite pad. You want to scratch or remove the anodize, but you can use it to get the salt off. And you can put some Real X around the screws there, and around the clamp hardware where it meets the frame. Put a little grease on the posts where the sleeve nuts go. Next, you want to make sure that the clicker ring is adjusted properly.
Is tight.
You want to make sure that the clicker dog is centered through the center of the frame.
The center of the bearing.
It's to the left or the right.
Off to one side is pretty evident.
It's plain to see, but
not in there correctly.
The clicker won't work properly.
So you go ahead
So
and
we want
line
to make
it,
sure
make
it's
sure
centered.
straight.
The arrow-shaped dog is
Snug
going
down the
directly
screws.
through the center of the bearing, and then you can snug down the screws. And you're done with the frame. The last thing you do is put the 3 sub-assemblies back together. To make sure the preset bearing spins well, go ahead and slide the spool back into the side plate. Take the E-clip, put in the notch on the spool shaft, and clip it on with your needle nose pliers. And you can slide your frame on. And replace the 4 side plate screws. It's good to dip those in grease or put a little Real X on those before you go in there. And you can snug those down with the Torx wrench. Next, you want to put a little bit of grease in on the end of the spool shaft where you got the E-clip, the bearing, and then replace the black cap. And finally, you want to put a Real X along dissimilar metals and spinning areas like the knob. Put a couple drops in there, that'll keep the knob spinning nice. Put a little bit around the set screw and the nut. And you can put a little grease on the 4 side plate screws, keep the salt water out of the little holes. Want to make sure when you're all done to give the reel a once over too after it's all serviced. Make sure there's everything's moving properly, spinning right. Wipe off all the excess grease. You put a couple drops on the clicker knob. Make sure it's moving right, and you have now serviced your Boss reel.